The genre most populated by endurance and terror, I'm Falcon, and today on gameranx, the top 10 survival horror games of 2017. Number 10 is Pamela, a game that is kind of like if you took Deus Ex and combined it with System Shock and put it in an open world. Pamela takes place in a fallen utopian city called Eden, in which a disease has taken out the majority of the populace. This is one of those open world games where the world itself is legitimately like the star. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like if you took Bioshock, put it into an open world, and made the point more about absorbing the world. Now, this game has got superb voice acting, great inventory management, more than a competent crafting system, and more importantly, an actually legitimately interesting skill tree that fits into the world itself very well. Now, this is still a game that is in early access, but in all honesty, I have to say this is easily one of the best games in this genre this year. It's not without its problems. The enemy AI is a little bit off, but it's very forgivable, even if it ends up in the final product like that. The overall experience is just way too good to be held back by something that, in all honesty, is a pretty minor gripe. It's a little more survival than it is horror, but it will keep you on your toes, and damn if it is not one of the best examples of this kind of game in years. Number 9 is Perception, a horror adventure about a blind woman who uses echolocation to see and generally just makes the game horrifying. You can only see a certain distance ahead of you at any given time, and that's due to the fact that you use sound to see. The team that made the game worked on Bioshock, Bioshock Infinite, and the original Dead Space, so, I mean, that's a good team if you ask me. And although you may end up expecting a little bit more out of the story than you're gonna get, the story kind of doesn't matter on account this game is terrifically well designed and does such a good job giving you both a survival horror and stealth experience that you literally have to become accustomed to not using as much visual information to move forward. A footstep, something falling, you need to pay attention to this stuff, and it makes the game incredibly interesting. Number 8 is Dead by Daylight, which is a little bit more focused towards multiplayer, but still a fantastic survival horror game. It's an asynchronous 4 versus 1 horror game that 4 survivors attempt to escape a killer and has just terrific sound design. There's a wide range of different characters you can play who can all do slightly different things, in some ways kind of co-opting the things that hero-based team shooters do, and really just comes together to make a very cohesive experience that honestly gives you different rounds every single time. And I want to mention the sounds again really quick, because the things that they do with the music cues and the sound effects when the killer gets near is just so good. If you're okay with trying out a survival horror, I think you'll become an addict. This game is fun as hell. Number 7 is Darkwood, a top-down 2D survival game that'll probably surprise you in more ways than one. First, in just how deep this game is. It's algorithmically generated, so it doesn't ever come off exactly the same, but it has a lot of areas within it that are actually carefully crafted and, well, frankly, are great. The story is very well written, the day-night mechanics, awesome, but more importantly, the sound is just terrifying. This game, if you play it with headphones at night, be prepared to not sleep for a week. Seriously, I'm not even joking with that. It has great atmosphere, great gameplay, and does just exactly what it should do to get replay value, as well as also give you an actual narrative. Number 6 is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which has a little bit less on the survival horror gameplay mechanics, but it does actually do a great job of being a really unsettling and kind of borderline horror game, but it does have some survival elements. But let me just go ahead and say this, there is not a chance I will talk about any kind of horror and not bring up Hellblade. Hellblade is freaking great. From a technical standpoint, it is incredible. It is such a well-optimized game that does not lag, it does not drop frames, it works really well. And on top of that, it's one of the better depictions of mental illness I've seen in a game, period. And that includes a large number of indie games that, well, in all actuality, spend much more time talking about that than being games. On top of it, this is a fun game. Like, this game works really well. It's probably one of the best games of the last several years, and deserves your money because it is a quote-unquote independent AAA game that, in my opinion, turned out a much more better finished product on the release date than pretty much any AAA studio does. Fantastic stuff. Number 5 is Hallo Neighbor, a very colorful game that probably might trick you with its aesthetic into thinking it's not terrifying, but it is. The music alone will just totally unsettle you. But the premise of this game, a stealth game in which you have to sneak into a neighbor's house who is, by all accounts, keeping a secret in his basement, and you have to gather up the items necessary to get into his basement. Now, you never get killed or anything, but it still somehow manages to feel as though the stakes are very high, and also manages to be a very unique experience. In fact, it's probably, aside from Perception, the most unique game on this list. Number 4 is Friday the 13th, the game, which is in a lot of ways similar to Dead by Daylight, but also in a lot of ways different. It's asynchronous, you have several players against the killer, Jason, and focuses probably the most on risk and reward. There's a lot of environmental gameplay, like fixing cars or lighting gas. Now, you'll either really like that Jason is overpowered, or you'll really hate it, and that kind of really depends on how you really like to play a game like this, and it will probably color your opinion of the game itself, but I think that it makes the game a lot more satisfying, and outwitting him is really, really enjoyable. Number 3 is Agony, a video game built on the Unreal Engine, setting you as a tormented soul in, well, hell. You can possess other entities in hell, and you'll have to do a lot of puzzle solving. In all actuality, it sounds a lot like this is a game that will be a very unique game. It might be some hide and seek as well as some interesting combat things based on the special abilities you get when you possess other demons, and frankly, it's one of those games that has managed to do such a good job of being mysterious while still kind of letting us know what it is. I have a lot of confidence in the game itself, and I'm pretty excited for it. Number 2 is Outlast 2, a game that I think we all have heard plenty about. If you liked Outlast 1, I have a feeling this is going to be a game for you, but if not, obviously, the sequel that builds on the same systems is probably not going to be a big deal. For all of the people who did enjoy it, however, this is a wild ride. As far as mastery of the Unreal Engine, these folks have got it. The scenarios this game continually pulls off are all just terrifying, and it does such a great job of creating atmosphere and environment just based on visuals alone, but the sound design is also phenomenal. This is a little more fast-paced than the first game, I'd say, but still kind of generally the same stuff. Basically, the title sums it up pretty well. If you can last, you can beat the game. If not, well, that's that. And finally, number 1 is Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which took Resident Evil in what seemed like a very different direction, but then ended up kind of feeling more like a Resident Evil game than the last few. It's first person, so that was an inherent change, but then once everything started seeping in, it really just worked in such a good way. I enjoy the hell out of Resident Evil 7. The characters, the plot, the setting, all of the gameplay mechanics that absolutely work exactly how you would expect Resident Evil 7 to work in first person, you know, scary as hell and inventory based. There's probably no game I can recommend more, and that's why it's at number 1. This game is great. If you like any Resident Evil or you just like the genre, this is the game to play this year. If you haven't, please do. I think you'll like it. A few bonus games for you. First, The Long Dark. It manages to be really scary while you're hanging out in the dark woods, hunted by wolves, trying to survive, as well as the Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 re-releases. These two side games are absolute classics as far as Resident Evil goes, although they do have their problems still, as it kind of melds the old school Resident Evil with the new school Resident Evil, not including Resident Evil 7. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Still, great games. What are your favorites? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you enjoyed this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.